Hello and welcome to the turbulent world with me, James M. Dorsey, as your host. A just published report on Israel and the United States' interception of Iranian missiles during the 12-day Israel-Iran war highlighted the Jewish state's dependence on U.S. military support. The report by the Jewish Institute for National Security of America, or JINSA, concluded that U.S. operated Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, air defense systems produced by Lockheed Martin accounted for almost half of all interceptions of Iranian missiles fired at Israel during the war. The U.S. positioned a second of its 7 THAAD systems and crew in Israel in April. The U.S. deployed the first system last October. A THAAD battery, one of the United States' most powerful anti-missile systems, typically deploys with 95 soldiers, 6 truck-mounted launchers, 48 interceptors, or 8 per launcher, and a mobile radar. The system intercepts incoming projectiles from up to 200 kilometers away with kinetic energy in a process often referred to as hit to kill or kinetic kill. The Institute's report suggested that Israel depended on THAAD because it lacked sufficient interceptors for its Arrow anti-ballistic missile system. The United States expended more than a year's worth of THAAD interceptor production in the Israel-Iran war at a cost of $12.7 million per interceptor, or $1.7 billion for the approximately 100 interceptors fired during the war. As a result, the United States used up about 14% of all its THAAD interceptors, which would take 3 to 8 years to replenish at current production rates, the report said. The Institute's Iran projectile tracker reported that the United States and Israel had successfully neutralized 201 of the 574 missiles fired by Iran during the war, with 316 landing in unpopulated areas. Israel has admitted that Iranian missiles had pierced its air defense systems, striking at military targets and residential areas. In a twist of irony, Iran increased its successful hit rate by 1 to 4% in incidents when they were confronted by THAAD interceptors, the Institute's report said, based on analysis of video shot by Amman-based photographer Zaid Abadi. Even so, the Institute argued that air defense support of Israel in the war served U.S. interests beyond coming to the aid of an ally. The strong support of a U.S. partner may also reinforce U.S. deterrence against Russia and China, the report said. What the report did not say is that it also demonstrated the degree to which Israel depends on the United States for its defense, despite the ruthless prowess of the Israeli military and the sophistication of the country's military-industrial complex. In doing so, the report by implication suggests that U.S. President Donald Trump's refusal to pressure Israel to change its brutal conduct of the Gaza war, allow for the unfettered entry into the Strip of humanitarian aid, and agree to a permanent end to the hostilities is a question of lack of political will, not leverage, despite U.S. assertions to the contrary. Echoing those assertions, U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon, Tom Barak, this week told Lebanese President Joseph Aoun and Prime Minister Nawaf Salam that the U.S. has no business in trying to compel Israel to do anything. America could only influence. The United States' Christian Zionist ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, went a step further when he denounced as disgusting a statement by 25 U.S. allies, including Australia, Britain, Canada, France, Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, and Sweden, calling for an end to the Gaza war and describing the killing of hundreds of Palestinians desperately seeking aid as horrifying. Parroting Israel's argument, Mr. Huckabee asserted that Gaza suffers for one reason: Hamas rejects every proposal. Blaming Israel is irrational. Mr. Huckabee's assertion suggests that the Trump administration's ceasefire negotiation strategy remains focused on pressuring Hamas without applying the same pressure to persuade Israel to drop its insistence on continuing the war until it has either defeated Hamas militarily and politically or the group surrenders. Similarly, the administration has refrained from using its leverage to get Israel to lift its blockade of the unfettered entry into Gaza of humanitarian aid, including food, that is costing unconscionable suffering and the deaths of innocent civilians, aimed at forcing Hamas to accept Israel's ceasefire terms and further the government's goal of depopulating the Strip. This week, State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce described as absolutely horrible the killing near the Zikim crossing last Sunday of 85 Palestinians desperate to find food, the highest death toll yet of aid seekers. The aid seekers gravitated towards Zikim in anticipation of a World Food Program or WFP convoy. Mrs. Bruce said the administration was advocating for the establishment of another humanitarian corridor as part of a ceasefire agreement. Israel denied assertions by WFP that the Israeli military had fired into the crowd of aid seekers. The military said it had fired warning shots and that the alleged death toll was inflated. Israel and the United Nations traded barbs this week, with Israel claiming that the UN was not moving its 950 aid trucks waiting to enter Gaza, and the UN asserting that Israel was blocking their entry into the Strip. Earlier, Israeli military spokesman Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani asserted international organizations were refusing to distribute 700 trucks worth of aid already in Gaza. He said Israel had facilitated the entry of 4,500 trucks in recent weeks. The United Nations denies the assertions. Journalists reporting from inside Gaza and Palestinian residents say there is no evidence for the Israeli claims, and that on the contrary, the humanitarian situation is worsening by the day. If the Israeli claims were true, it would be logical to assume that desperate Gazans would be looting not only convoys entering the Strip, but also spaces where the alleged 700 trucks worth of aid was stored. Spokespeople for international organizations said their Gazan staff, like other Palestinians, were among those at risk because of the lack of food. What you see is not an isolated story, said Bushra Khalidi, an Oxfam representative in the West Bank city of Ramallah, referring to pictures of emaciated people in Gaza. It's a daily, heart-wrenching reality for the Palestinians, including my own colleagues. At Oxfam, we are not just witnessing this crisis, we're living it. I have family in Gaza. I've got my colleagues and the communities that we serve. This is not a humanitarian failure. This is a deliberate policy. Our staff are standing in the same food lines, risking being shot, Mrs. Khalidi told Al Jazeera. Our colleagues are humanitarian workers living in Gaza. They are not separate from the suffering. They are experiencing death, hunger, displacement, danger since 21 months. They are collapsing. They face directly the effect of dehydration and malnutrition. We are watching them pass to death, added Mara Ben-Asconi, Middle East Regional Advocacy Advisor at Humanity and Inclusion UK. The group is among 111 organizations that include Oxfam, Save the Children, and Doctors Without Borders, who this week called for an immediate ceasefire, the opening of all land crossings into the Strip, and the free flow of aid through UN-led mechanisms. An association of Agence France-Presse, or AFP journalists, warned that without immediate intervention, the last reporters in Gaza will die. The association said, "We have lost journalists in conflicts. Some have been injured, others taken prisoner, but none of us can ever remember seeing colleagues die of hunger. We refuse to watch them die." The association is working to evacuate its 10 freelancers from the Strip. International news organizations rely on local journalists for their reporting from Gaza because Israel does not allow foreign press to enter the Strip, except for on tightly controlled Israeli military tours. Meanwhile, with its popularity in Gaza hitting rock bottom, Hamas has repeatedly offered to release all its remaining 50 hostages kidnapped during the group's October 7, 2023 attack on Israel that killed some 1,200 people, mostly civilians, in exchange for a complete Israeli withdrawal and a permanent end of hostilities. Even so, in a mirror image of one another, neither Hamas nor Israel has so far been willing to do what it takes to end the suffering of innocent Gazans. Hamas, like Mr. Netanyahu, prioritizes its survival rather than preventing more Gazans from dying. Nevertheless, U.S. and Israeli officials remain optimistic that a ceasefire agreement may be within reach. The officials point to Israel's flexibility on its troop deployment or redeployment in Gaza, and Hamas's willingness to forgo its demand for an ironclad Israeli commitment to a permanent ceasefire. Ceasefire or no ceasefire, whataboutism and blaming the other party for the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza is not an argument that washes. Moreover, Israel's blocking and throttling of the flow of humanitarian aid constitutes a war crime, even if Israel accuses Hamas of looting aid convoys and selling the aid at exorbitant prices on the black market. While Hamas may be part of the problem, so are Israeli-backed criminal groups and desperate innocent Palestinians, often unable to reach the handful of distribution points operated by the controversial U.S. and Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, who grab what they can off aid trucks as they enter the Strip. Palestinians pay the price for Israel's ill-fated attempt to let the foundation replace the United Nations' well-entrenched infrastructure that includes hundreds of distribution points, many of which Israeli forces have targeted. Close to 1,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli troops and U.S. private security personnel employed by the foundation, or crushed in stampedes as they clamored for food boxes at its distribution points. Israel has flattened the southern Gaza city of Rafah, where it plans to corral 600,000 Palestinians in a humanitarian tent city. Many Palestinians and critics of Israel believe the encampment is a first step towards pushing Gazans out of the Strip. Mapping by Adi Ben-Nun, the director of Hebrew University's Geographic Information System Center, shows that Israel has completely or partially destroyed 89% of Rafah's buildings, 84% of buildings in northern Gaza, and 78% in Gaza City. Based on satellite imagery, Mr. Ben-Nun estimates that 160,000 buildings, or 70% of all structures in Gaza, have sustained severe damage, with at least 25% destroyed. The Israeli political establishment's extreme cynicism has been completely normalized, said journalist Amos Harel. Mr. Harel noted that in contrast to Mr. Netanyahu, Israel's military believes that it has already dismantled Hamas's infrastructure, with its military wing reduced to small guerrilla groups that operate independently with no coordination by a central command. The commanders in the field are convinced that Hamas has been weakened, its military resources are reaching their end, and the massive destruction of the buildings in the Gaza Strip will hinder the organization's efforts to recover and reestablish itself as a substantial threat to the Gaza border communities in Israel, Mr. Harel said. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is set to meet this week in Rome with Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer and a senior Qatari envoy in the hope that a breakthrough in the ceasefire negotiations can be achieved. The question is whether Mr. Witkoff has the mandate to do what it would take to put an end to the indefensible plight of Gaza's civilian population. So far, there is little indication that he does. Thank you for joining me today. The rise of artificial intelligence magnifies the importance of journalists with true expertise, top-notch sourcing, and historical depth. These journalists, like me, tell and analyze in-depth stories. Their goal is to enhance their readers' and listeners' ability to form informed opinions of their own. We don't just chronicle events. Our reporting and analysis are shaped by years of on-the-ground coverage, expertise, and historical knowledge. In my case, I have covered geopolitics, the Middle East, and the Muslim world for decades, having been based in multiple countries, including Israel, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iran, the UAE, Lebanon, Kuwait, and Turkey. Hard-hitting reporting and analysis that lets the chips fall where they may is even more critical in a world of brutal wars, unimaginable humanitarian crises, and increasing authoritarianism. That is the turbulent world with James M. Dorsey's mission since its inception 15 years ago. Thousands worldwide are avid readers and listeners of the turbulent world. Join them in helping to maintain and expand the column and podcast by becoming a paid supporter. You can contribute by visiting jamesmdorsey.substack.com and choosing one of the subscription options. Thank you for your support and loyalty. Take care and see you soon.